welcome to the show. How many live shows have we done together, Coach Nick? It got to be 500, 1,000, 1,500? How many?
I mean, how long has it been in terms of, years? No.
2.5, 3, maybe.
Oh, it can't be. But if it is, and it's every week for, ish every week, right? Yeah, it's hundreds for sure.
We got a lot of experience in the game, Coach Nick, but here we are on the NBA report, and we have to start in Madison Square Garden. What a crazy ending. Raise the roof, Coach Nick. What a crazy ending. I mean, I think everybody will remember the Brunson 3 and even more the DiVincenzo 3, but the unsung hero was iHeart, right? Offensive rebound in the block there. And then there was also some conspiracy around the end of that game.
Oh, I know. I mean, it definitely goes down amongst the great comebacks of all time. And there's some interesting things that people didn't even necessarily notice. The Brunson drive, he loses the ball, and DiVincenzo somehow comes out with it to keep that possession alive before Brunson hits what is ridiculously, that roll, right? Brunson would have been a total goat in the bad way, right, for that, because he would have lost the ball on a drive, and then the game would have probably been over. So that was a big one. And then for him to get that roll, like, I don't know, you don't normally see a ball go up and then kind of drop straight down through the basket in like Don Nelson way. So, I mean, the whole thing was just like the basketball gods decided beforehand that this was going to happen, I guess, because I don't know, Philly played well and they had a chance, and Lowry, misses a free throw. Obviously, that proved really crucial too. So a lot of things, but we got to get. I don't know. What else do we want to talk about? There's we can go into this, and maybe we should figure out a way to do this in order so we don't miss anything.
Well, let's start with the Brunson 3.
Okay. So that was so the big one is, okay, give the game ball to DiVincenzo for keeping that one alive. It was crazy. The ball was, I mean, listen, Lowry knocks the ball out of DiVincenzo's hands and then they challenge it on the foul call. I don't know, man. That was a foul. Like, I'm looking through that replay, and Lowry fouled him and knocked the ball loose, and they challenge, and they get the Sixers get the ball back, and I think they scored on that one after that. So that was weird. Right. But it was very much like scrummy, very much like they're just going to battle. It was down and dirty, like you're on the playground, and every inch has to be fought for. So that was pretty crazy too. What else? What else we have to talk about?
I do want to talk about OG for a second, because I feel like, in the past, a big criticism for the Knicks was getting effortless buckets, right? And I think when people think of OG, they think of the defense, but now, like, his winning percentage is absolutely ridiculous with the Knicks, and he's hitting the corner 3, he's cut into the basket, and I think he's giving them what they need when it comes to quick hitting buckets.
Oh, absolutely. And he knows like where to cut and when, and not get in other people's way, and keep the thing flowing, which is obviously very important. And then adds gravity where he can pull his defender out a little bit too. So all those, I mean, he really just is one of the higher IQ basketball players you're going to find out there. And also just like the mindset to blend in a perfect way. Like, if there was ever a team that he needed to go to, it would have been this Knicks team with Coach Thibodeau as the head coach. It's perfect for him. We have to hope he doesn't, he can stay healthy with the minutes he's going to be playing.
Yes. Embiid was complaining. It feels like LeBron was complaining as well when it comes to the end of these game situations. Do you feel that they were justified, or the refs are just really not doing their job? And then, the replay center is a whole other thing with Braun talking about that, complaining about that. Embiid didn't seem to be happy as well.
Oh yeah.
I know I'll go back and forth between two games, but they're all complaining at the end of the day.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Embiid had to tell Nick Nurse to stop complaining, right? He was the guy being the adult there. Now, and we could talk about that, because that was on my mind. There's a whole bunch of things, because the Sixers wanted to contest this and say that the refereeing was terrible. Okay. They got that Lowry overturn was a real big benefit for them. So they shouldn't complain about that. And getting back toward the end sequence, Nick Nurse had tried to say that he had called a timeout, right? And then we probably have already seen that replay over and over again, where the key thing, I think, when you're coaching in the middle of the tumultuousness of a game, like, it feels like certain things happen in reality, but when you watch it back, it turns out it's not really that close. So we watched him, sort of signal for a timeout, but you have to remember, signaling for a timeout doesn't grant you a timeout. right? You have to
Mm.
make sure the referee sees it. He has to have like half of a second to process what's going on, because there are moments we've seen in the past where they've called the timeout and they got upset because it took an extra second for the timeout to actually be called, and they weren't going to put like more time on the clock. But that's because there's a natural human reaction to sort of process things, see it, oh, I got to blow my whistle, stop the clock. So, but he pulled the call back. You know, he was about to call it kind of, and then he said no, he doesn't want to call it. Um, and by the time he then tried to signal for it, Maxey didn't have the ball anymore. And you cannot call a timeout if your team does not have possession of the ball. And so he was really upset about that when there really wasn't much to be upset about. But explain this to me. On the inbounds, you see Lowry kind of toss it to Maxey under pressure, and it wasn't a bounce pass. How does the ball touch Maxey's hand and end up 10 feet in the air before becomes loose? Did you see that? Did you pay attention to that?
Tell me how.
He kind of like bats it up. It was the weirdest thing. Go watch it again and you won't believe it, because usually you take two hands and you try and snatch it and you grab it. They're going to follow you, whatever they're going to try and do. And instead, he literally with his left hand, I need the other reverse angle. I couldn't find it. He must just knock it up into the air, and then, you know what I'm saying? Because then it was
Yeah.
free. And now, you know, once it's a free ball like that, there might be a lot of contact. They're not going to call any of that, right? That's not an issue.
Right.
And then at that point, when he does get control and he's lost his balance, the whole thing is off and he falls down. Like, I don't think that there was a foul there. Did you feel like there was a foul with Hart in that whole melee?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Especially again in that situation, we know, and then the refs have really been letting stuff go, right? Like this whole playoffs has been fascinating for that as well.
Yeah, and it feels like the more physical teams are doing better at this point because of that.
That's interesting. Who are the more physical teams?
I mean, Minnesota, we could get to that series later.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Minnesota for sure. But then again, they're so long, and I mean, you're right, they're aggressive, but
And
like,
I mean, and the Knicks are up 2-0. Like,
yeah,
you know.
like Alexander Walker, who, by the way, I'm kind of getting sold on his defensive things. I mean, I know people have been touting it, but like, okay, but he's so long and so quick and explosive, and so is Anthony Edwards, and so is McDaniels. So they're like the skinny. Well, I guess Edwards is not so skinny, but like the other two guys are the skinny long guys. I don't feel like they're like beating on guys, but either way, they're able to do some damage defensively that was not allowed, you know, in the regular season earlier or before. So no question the Knicks will benefit from that, but so should the Sixers, right? Shout out to Tobias Harris.
Mm.
He played awesome defense down the stretch on Brunson and forced several misses, two or three, maybe three or maybe more. And that might be the solution. They might want to have him on Brunson a little bit more, because I think that the conventional wisdom would be get somebody bigger on Brunson, somebody longer to affect all that mid range stuff.
So we talked about Joel Embiid a little bit on our show, and I feel like he should shut it down at this point because I think he's really doing himself danger. But I do appreciate the Warrior mentality, because I feel like, you know, when I mind these stuff, I tried to play at times when I shouldn't have played. But I feel like it's an unpopular opinion at this point to tell him to shut it down, right? Like most people are saying, like, nah, play. But I don't know, man. I just don't like the way he's moving, and I think he's really risking it at this point.
I know. I mean, but the dude did 34, 10, and 6. So
Yeah, but you got to watch it though. Like the way he's moving is crazy, and also his knee buckled twice since he's been back.
yeah, I know. I mean, people want to say, and these are probably not the surgeons or the doctors that deal with him directly, or like they're trying to say, well, he
Right.
can't really do much more damage to it. It's just mental. But you
He
know,
could blow out his whole knee.
I mean, you know, you can blow out your knee playing basketball at any time in theory too. But you're right. But so,
I think his knee. Unfortunately, I hope the best for him. There's more of a risk for him at
uh,
this point.
that's true. I mean, to me, it's like, okay, you go up and you land on someone's foot in a terrible, awkward way, and you just tear up your knee. Like that could happen anytime for anybody, no matter what condition your knee is.
100%.
God forbid that happens. But you are right that there are these little things that like seem pretty innocuous, and then he's going to the locker room for some quick treatment and coming back because he's already in so much pain. So I don't know what to make of it. I'm not going to argue with you on the point. It's a good point, and we have to think about his career. But
Yeah.
we get the narrative of like the Willis Reed kind of thing where he's coming out there and by the way, it's not like he's not performing. I know his percentages are low. Take out the 3-point shooting and it's probably pretty good at that point. He's performing and he is keeping him there. They had the game, right? The Sixers had that game that really, you know, should be 1-1 the way they played. And just truly remarkable how that all played out, and they were able to get that steal and then 2 threes, in a row. Boxing out. Should we talk about boxing out and how, my whole take on boxing out, right?
Tell me more. I know you don't like players diving on the floor. I know that for a
Yeah,
fact.
that too. But so the traditional box out, and I have the benefit of being old enough where I was, remember being trained this, and I would coach it too, where the shot goes up and you turn away from the basket, find someone to box out, hit them with your forearm, and then pivot around to get them on your back.
Right.
Now, in the interim, you're not tracking the ball, you don't know where it's going, and so you can't get the ball when the ball starts ricocheting all over the place. And so you see MB do that. He goes to Hart instead of Hartenstein, who was like way out there. It was a scramble. So but if MB had just turned and tracked the ball the whole way, I think he probably gets that ball.
Well, I mean, Hardenstein, not only does he have great heart and great hustle, like he's athletic off too, as well. Like he got up on that rebound.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hartenstein was terrific, and you know what? He didn't get a lot of minutes because of foul trouble in the game one, and they got some good Mitchell Robinson minutes. But we both talked on our show about how much better Hartenstein is offensively, but then he does bring it defensively. And let's talk about the Maxey play, right? The Maxey goes in on a nice out of bounds where they threw it to him in the backcourt to get going fast with a ball screen from Embiid near the half court, and so now it's really tough. You can't keep up with no one can keep up with Maxey at that speed, right? Like, and he got by Hartenstein, but the problem is at the end of the play, no matter how fast you're going, you still got to have to get that shot off and toward the basket. That block was amazing.
Yeah.
Really, truly incredible of a play on both ends. By the way, great call by the Sixers. Nurse, great call, great move. Just better defense by Hartenstein. You see Nick Nurse freaking out about wanting a jump ball on the rebound, right? Because OG kind of got it, and then they had a foul. Nick Nurse was sort of like needed. I think MB was right. He was beside himself. He needed to find some inner peace, do some meditation, something, because that will, your team can feed off of that agita and that kind of craziness. You need to kind of be a little bit more in control.
Yep. Hardenstein, unsung hero for sure. Let's shift it over.
You gotta pronounce his name right, man.
Go ahead. You pronounce it.
Come on now.
Come on. I'm from
That's how it
America, bro.
is.
I'm from this country, bro.
Hey, listen, I'm not going to call you, well, how would I mispronounce your name? I don't even know. Combo. So, but,
Go ahead. And then we're going to shift to your video and Denver's Lakers after this point, but go ahead.
The last thing about that is they're down 3 or up by 3, and I can't swear on this, can I?
Probably not. Probably shouldn't. Family show.
Knicks and Thibodeau do not foul when up by 3. And I got to tell you, that shot by Embiid was too good of a shot to tie it. And they had ample opportunities with 4 or 5 seconds left to take a foul, put them on the free throw line, get the rebound. So, there's certain coaches at certain, generations, like, Thibodeau is pretty much my age, where they don't believe, they won't do it, they won't take the foul. And I'm going to tell you, that might come back to haunt them in this playoffs. Someone's going to nail a 3 and then win in overtime because they didn't take a foul. And I was screaming at the like that, crazy guy on YouTube. I was screaming at the screen because I couldn't believe that they weren't going to take the foul.
I thought you were the crazy guy on YouTube, but okay, we could talk.
Back to that. I used to.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your video because Denver versus Lakers. Jamal Murray hits a big shot. I mean, that's not the whole story, though. I mean, like, the Lakers should have won this game in a lot of ways. AD and Bron play well. They were up 20 at one point.
Oh, yeah.
And Denver just snatches it away.
Well, you have to. So I did the video I did. I was like, okay, well, let's look at what was going on. It's a two-parter here because, first of all, what was killing them in the first half was AD and D'Lo. They combined for 42 points, barely missed a shot. D'Lo was 6 for 7. Now, here's from 3. The problem is, in the second half, D'Lo is not going to go 6 for 7 from 3. He's just not that guy. Nobody is that guy. Even Klay Thompson will cool down, right? So you had that going. But you also, when you look at the misses that the Nuggets had in the first half and the breakdowns defensively, the Lakers had, I would say, maybe 8 to 10 possessions where they just got completely lucky. They gave up really good shots. The Nuggets would normally hit those. So it was a little bit of fool's gold, this big lead that they had. Now, let's stick to that for a second because oftentimes you'll see this where, a team is lulled into a false sense of security thinking, oh, yeah, this is great, we're doing really well, when in reality, there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. And of all the teams they're going to do that against, it's the Nuggets are probably the one team that are going to be able to recover, keep their wits about them, and then start to knock down those shots. I would say that the Lakers would have beaten all but maybe just the Nuggets last night, right? The other night. You know, every other team they would have played in the playoffs, they would have beaten. You know what I mean? There's only one, maybe two teams that could have done what the Nuggets did. So it was sort of a combination of things, but that's how good the Nuggets are.
AD was cooking Jokic in the first half, and then they switched Gordon on him, and it changed things a little bit.
Yes, but that really wasn't why I don't think they switched Gordon onto him. And so that was sort of the crux of the video, which I hope more people watch because it was fascinating to basically Mike Malone, the head coach of the Nuggets, was dictating the Lakers offense,
Mm.
which is fascinating, right? And we always talk about, adjustments and what that means, but in particular, when you have a LeBron coach or LeBron playing team, so LeBron is going
Well,
to
LeBron coached and playing, right?
yeah, right. And that way, it's a good testament to why you can't be a player coach. There are too many things to calculate in your head real time to deal
I
with.
mean, LeBron basically is that, though.
He basically is. And we see sort of the perils of that, right? Because we know that his mindset is down the stretch, I'm going to control all of this, right? He does it during the rest of the game too, but like really down the stretch. It's safe to say that Mike Malone knows this as well. So he
Mm.
knows that they're going to do the matchup hunting, which means
Yeah.
going to bring up the guy they want. The LeBron wants him to guard him, screen with that guy, force a switch, and then go to work.
Yep.
Again, this has worked for him a lot of his career, so it's not like it's a bad idea necessarily. But by putting Jokic on Rui, you could see LeBron instantly saying, "Okay, Rui, come on screen for me." And what that does is it places AD standing there in the corner just watching. So now instead of the vaunted LBJ AD pick and roll, which would kill teams and get great shots all day long, you're doing LBJ and Rui. And that was a mistake. And then if you have the ball goes to AD like in the corner, he's not posting up Gordon where he'd have an advantage. Now he's going to have to try and drive, and Gordon is even on that one. Gordon can handle AD trying to drive to the basket, which he did. So that was an interesting thing. But even the best part of it was, and might be a little bit of a test for Malone just to kind of put his toe in the water to see what would happen. He intentionally puts Jokic on Reeves. And you can see right away that LeBron's computer brain is going and saying, okay, Reeves, you take the ball. You got to go at Jokic. That ain't Reeves' game. He's not really that guy. But so imagine
When
down.
he's cooking.
I mean, even when he's cooking, and I don't know. It's like, and he wasn't cooking. He did hit a really tough baseline shot, but it wasn't like he was, on fire.
Right.
So imagine this. It's down the stretch. I gotta check. Let's just say it's 4 minutes to go in a tight game, and that offensive possession was literally Reeves dribbling 12 or 15 times and then kicking out to Rui for a three that he bricks. So LeBron never touches it. AD never touches it. D'Lo never touches it. Your best three players never even touch the ball in one of the most crucial possessions you have in the fourth quarter, all because Mike Malone said, hey, you guard Jokic, guard Reeves, and let's see what's going to happen with that. And he did it exactly what they thought. So they're going to have to sit down and figure this out a little bit better and figure out how to integrate all of their players together in an offense. They finally did Spain pick and roll a couple times down the stretch, and that was really valuable. But at that point, it began to fall apart for them. They lost that lead mentally. You could see them just dejected even before the fireworks at the end. And here we are as an interesting blueprint to perhaps the rest of LeBron's career.
It's crazy that it felt like Jokic didn't have a good game, but then you look up and he had 27 and 20.
Yeah, and like there's only like six players that have ever done, or six times it's happened, and he's done it like four, but or seven times, and he's done it four. Same with like Embiid, right? Embiid is laboring, doesn't really look good, whatever. But like you look at his line as well. Maybe it's that those big guys kind of can sneaky get those numbers without even feeling like it.
I guess every trend has a tipping point, and this is the tipping point where like the small ball era meets like the really dominant bigs, and there's no answer for them. And bigs are just going to need players that they could throw at these stars, even though they're really unguardable at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because we might even keep going smaller and smaller, right? Because at some point, you can't stop Jokic anyway. So make him guard a guard, and you get some more threes that way. But no one's really successfully done that yet. I'm trying to actually rack my brain to picture like ultra small ball.
Well,
Again,
I mean, the Celtics, in theory, could be that with Porzingis, even though he's not small, but he could stretch Jokic out.
yeah. Yeah, that would probably be the one way to do it because Jokic can, KP will cannot stop him at all. But if you want to trade twos for threes, then great, and maybe some foul trouble. So that might be it. But I think I've told you, like I've gone through it at least 2 or 3 times over the last couple of years, figuring out how to beat the Nuggets. Like I was trying to prep that video, and I come away wasting a day of going through footage because there's no answer. I can't. There's nothing that's been obvious to me that like would say, oh, this is how you're going to do it.
So they're an unsolvable problem. Is there any team with the personnel to beat them?
I mean, the key here is they're so good down the stretch and unflappable.
Yeah.
That it's like when you get a team like that and they've already gone through the fire and already have all that hardened experience, then yeah, I just don't know because you have them dead. You have them down 20 points in the third quarter. It's like done. And but over the course of the next 10 minutes, it's like they're going to slowly come back. It's kind of like in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid when they're being tracked by Lord Baltimore, right? He can't shake him. He's constantly chasing him, right? And so that's sort of what they are, right? And you can't, that they're going to take great shots, they're going to execute, and they're going to play good enough defense to put you in hard positions. So yeah, unless you get a 30 some point lead and it's late in the third, then you might as well you be prepared. They're going to come back.
I guess we could segue to the Mavs in a bit, and I don't know if this will be the answer to your question, but who do you feel is the biggest threat to them at this point when you look at the rest of the West?
Oh my goodness gracious. We were talking about this. Like maybe the Clippers could be sort of that way. You have Zubats you can throw out there. You got Tice and you got somebody else out there that they can throw at them. Who am I forgetting? But anyway, so that there's something there, and they're really good defensively when you have Kawhi and PG and out there and man running around. Obviously their Achilles heel is going to be Russ making low basketball IQ plays, but they've been able to temper that pretty well with like cutting his playing time, so you don't have as many. But
People,
Russ, by
people,
the way,
people don't like when you say that about Russ, man.
but IQ. I don't normally say IQ with Russ. Although it's sort of what I'm talking about because it drives the coach. Any coach would drive. It would be driven crazy watching him play. But like even down the stretch, he's sort of I guess wanted to try and take a foul in the open court and just shoved the guy. It could have been a tech. And then a minute later, he really aggressively knocks the ball out of Kyrie's hand after a dumb foul in the backcourt that, in a regular season game is probably a tech,
Mhm.
So, it's bad enough if he did that like in the first quarter or whatever, but like that, this was the last couple minutes of a tight game that would have really, they already did cost them anyway, but they lost the game, but like it would have been egregious. So it makes me worried. You see guys who are so willing to do those kind of plays that are not smart at that situation. What's going to happen, next time?
It's interesting. I mean, I feel some people would look at Minnesota as Denver's biggest threat. I think OKC's being slept on a little bit, but then the Mavs too. Those three teams might be a bigger threat to the Nuggets than even the Clippers.
Yeah, so obviously we like the notion of Minnesota. Rudy against Jokic doesn't feel great to me. I probably need to do a deep dive into some of those matchups individually.
You know what you should do?
Yeah.
Well, maybe people. I don't know if people would be interested in this. Who does better against Jokic, Porzingis or Rudy? I'd be interested to see that because I remember Porzingis holding up against him okay a few times.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm sure people would assume it's Rudy, but you're right.
Right, right.
I love it when you find out, hey, you know what? That's not the reality, and let's show you why.
That's why you do what you do, right? That's
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But anyway, it's not always where I can find a good juicy one like that.
Mhm.
It's like even with the one-footed step through on Twitter when we talk a lot about that and we see guys do that. And you still have people saying it's travel. I tried to say, well, it really isn't. Someone had taught you that and they were wrong. It doesn't go over as well sometimes, but at the very least, if we're going to use video evidence for matchup stuff, I think maybe that could make an impression. But sometimes people get really, inflexible with what they have perceived and what they think, and even though it's not the reality.
Biggest takeaways: Mavs beat the Clippers in game 2. Luka was playing defense out there, hitting tough shots, yelling at the crowd.
Yeah.
What'd you make of it, Coach Nick?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't like the Mavs defense is not good. Uh,
Mhm.
they don't really,
But it was better yesterday than game
I
one.
mean, it was sort of better, but then there's just like a lack of sort of foundational, fundamental, rotational stuff they don't get. And even like at one point, Luca switched with Derek Jones Jr. and they gave up the wide open three to Harden, down the stretch, which was really key. And like things like that. I mean, if it happens in the first quarter, okay, whatever. But like you cannot be having that kind of weird miscommunication. And I was actually studying it because obviously Luca thinks they're in switch mode, so everything needs to be a switch. And Derek Jones was yelling at him back. They were yelling at each other at the end of that, and it was weird because you would think, okay, let's just pretend that they are in switch mode, which made sense. Then what is Derek Jones saying? Like he should have been like, yeah, you're right, I should have switched, but they didn't, and they both went to like PG, and then Harden's wide open.
So there's a lack of communication, you're saying.
Yeah, although I guess the idea being on that particular play, listen, in Luca's mind, there isn't any communication. It is simply we switch. You don't need to have that
Or
communication.
it's we do what I say because I'm Luca.
Yeah, or the lack of communications in the huddle, right? Like with kid not telling them or not making it clear, who knows what, right?
Right.
So, and I've seen even things like the helper comes over, but no one drops down and they get the offensive rebound, or then Zubats is open and they get to dunk. So there's things like that that are concerning to me. But Luca is, I think he's just kind of screwing around out there, in a good way. I think he's willing to try and do anything. He's willing to try any kind of pass, any kind of shot, and he smiles about it later because he probably also realizes that it was a BS ridiculous thing. That they were pressing down. Let's see. The Mavericks were up by 1 or 2, whatever it was. Full court press. They had him trapped. He gets up off of 1 foot in the air, near the baseline of his own baseline, looks one way, and then okay, so it wasn't a no look, even though I shared it on Twitter as a no look. It's a look away, and then throws this crazy bounce pass, right? That completely fooled man that would have normally been a turnover and a dunk or
Oh
whatever.
yeah. I know what you're talking about now.
And so it's like who would
That
ever.
look that looked dangerous.
Yeah, right. And you know what? I think he had a plan. It looked like he understood what he was trying to do. And his ability, by the way, to move, he literally has mind control. His eyes can move defenders. He literally, and he does it a lot with a look.
Jokic does that a lot as well.
Yeah, but I think maybe Luca does it
You
more.
know, I mean, Trey and Jokic often leverage the pass to get a bucket. I see them both do that a lot.
They do. I wanted to say that Doncic does it more,
Mm.
and he's really got it down to a science where he will look and he's going to pass, and the guy literally just moves, out of the way, and then he throws the pass he wants to make. We need to teach this, and I feel like people. I have even tweeted that out too. But we need to start teaching more of these wondrous passing skills that we don't. I think normally a coach will just shrug and be like, "Gosh, we're so lucky we have this random guy that walked in the gym one day and is throwing these kind of passes." Instead of saying we need to be able to develop this for more of our players, and more of our players need to want to do this and develop a skill and know how to look away or no look. I don't think it's that hard. I think it's there's a fear there that we can get rid of as a coach, as an encouragement, and then also training. So we'll have that more. But either way, when you see Luca in the most intense, toughest environment of the playoffs, smiling and screwing around, basically, it's inspiring because he's probably removed all notion of pressure, right? There isn't necessarily,
Yeah.
and as a result, he's going to nail those threes that are like crazy step back threes that they need to have, and he's going to hit those shots he needs to because he's not scared, he's not tense, he's just screwing around out there.
Do you feel like he has the biggest killer instinct in the NBA at this point?
Wow, because killer instinct in some respects would be there's a look that you would want to have on your face, right?
Not
And
not a guy smiling, right?
right, but yeah, there's not
But
many.
I feel like there's a lot of horror movies where a guy's smiling and killing people.
Okay. Well, that's probably, well, there's no question there was a horror movie for the Clippers last night because yes, he was doing that to them. And yeah, there can't be more than a couple players who are more cold than Luca down the stretch, right? He will tear your heart out and eat it in front of you for pleasure. And so, regardless of his mindset, even though it might not be the traditional killer or whatever, the guy, yeah, he is as tough as nails. And again, there's something to be explored there where the freedom that he has been able to tap into and to make any play he kind of wants to has yielded the results that you would say any tough player could make.
How do you see the rest of the series going? 1-1 now.
Yeah, well, let's see, the Clippers lost their home court advantage, having gotten Kawhi back. right? Um, you
You know
know,
what's interesting? We see this crazy dynamic where it happens a lot, and obviously teams are at their best when their best player is playing. But we've seen the Lakers play better without Bron at times. We've seen the Grizzlies a few years back when Ja was injured play better. We saw Dame and them win Game 1, and I feel like there's a few reasons for this. You're not gonna hit your ceiling without your best player, but sometimes it's harder for the defense to target anything. And when you're not targeting anything, you're giving up everything. And on top of that, the ball moves better also at times. And we're seeing that Randall's not the Knicks' best player. He's their second best player, but the ball moves better when he's not playing. It's a really interesting paradox, if you will.
yeah, the Ewing rule or whatever that they came up with, and same with Barkley. Even back in the day, that's when I first became aware of that. When Barkley was with the Sixers, and he'd come out because it was really they throw it to Barkley and he'd do a 10 dribble ISO in the post, and it would just everything would slow down. And then as soon as he would go out, I mean, yeah, it looked like Princeton. So
Right, right,
there's
right.
no question that there is that notion, and we've seen it even more often in this playoffs as well. I'm trying to think. Well, LeBron, when he sat, it's when D'Lo and AD were eating a lot of those buckets. Right, they were really going well. He came back in, and they still scored some other ones too in that first half. But without question, like that was happening. So yeah, there is something there. But ultimately, right, when you take a starter out of your lineup, and even if it's a role-playing starter, it does cause some adjustment issues overall, maybe in the long run. And so in the 7 game series, you might be, one game could do it, but maybe not in the rest of the games, if it's even. The Bucks are probably I don't know. That's an interesting series too. I gotta take a deeper dive into. But yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. But the thing with the Clippers and the Mavericks, it's got to go 7, right? This is gonna be a 7 game series.
Yeah, I think this was the most anticipated series. It's really fun, and it's going to be interesting to see. If they lost this game, the Mavs would have been in trouble with Kawhi back, right? They really needed this one, and they got it.
Yeah, they needed it for all those reasons, and they got it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got a few more of these kind of endings. And the only thing now is if it goes 7, you're traditionally supposed to choose the home team, which would be the Clippers. But I don't know if you want to bet against Luka in a game 7. Speaking of that toughness, that would be a tough one. I might have to still pick Luka if it's a game 7.
Yeah, let's shift to the Phoenix Suns, who I believe are in trouble. Never really liked their roster construction from the beginning of the season. And I realized a few other things about their roster construction. They really don't have a rim running big.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have a point guard in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
And the thing I've been saying for a while now, and we've talked about this on your show, the redundancy and skill set with their top 3 players. Jason Timpf was on my pod, and he kind of talked about when they go your turn, my turn, and so it's usually a problem. What do you make of their roster construction? Was this doomed from the beginning, or do you think there's something they could do here?
Well, it's also the matchup. It's the one team that can handle. They have enough length and a defensive ability to match up like that, right? That's not. I mean, the Clippers could do it, but not everybody can. So and if they had an easy first round and then they went the second round and lost, like does that change? Is that any different? Probably not, because I have to imagine the expectations for this group is higher than that even. But I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I'm looking at Eric Gordon. I watched a chunk of this game. And Eric Gordon actually shot well, but like I gotta look and check. It had to be like maybe toward the end when the game was over, because he's terrible. He's really not helping them right now. And they're not getting a lot of contributions from anybody else. And then meanwhile, the big 3 are not shooting well. So to me, what I'm sensing, even just from watching it on TV, is a general sense of lack of cohesion, lack of getting along. Everyone's on edge. By the way, Frank Vogel was having some trouble, just like Nick Nurse was, right? Nick Nurse was all over the place, and Embiid even was quoted saying, "I had to tell him to stop." Vogel was losing it, and they didn't tee him up, but they probably should have. So I think everyone's sort of dealing with the stress in suboptimal ways, and it's showing on the court. And so, yeah, it's just all the things that you listed as far as roster construction as well it's not a great fit. And there probably is some version of the Matrix where you could make this kind of work, but I think that would be it's such a rare, it's a tough one that I don't think they're going to solve.
Anthony Edwards might be the next face of the NBA.
He should be. We've been talking about that for how long now?
Who does he remind you of?
Michael Jordan.
Why so?
But like Well, some of the moves are right out of Michael Jordan's playbook and Kobe. You know what I mean? Some of like the dream shake turnarounds from 15 near the free throw line or elbow. So all of that. I mean, he probably is built more like Clyde Drexler, right?
I
And
mean, I think he's bigger and stronger than Clyde, right?
Clyde was pretty big and strong too. It's
I
similar,
feel like Anthony Edwards is more of that football player build than Clyde was. No.
even more okay, but there's a similar movement pattern there versus NBA.
Okay.
But it's certainly the skill shot making stuff reminds me a lot of that. Shooting on the
Yeah.
way down, the incredible like the hang time, things like that. The jump shot a little bit because it's a high release sort of over the head, which is what Michael did, but it's not the same because it's more like even behind him more. But and then by the way, it's the one thing that makes me nervous about. I don't think he's ever going to be like better than an average 3-point shooter, but he doesn't need to be anything more than an average 3-point shooter. That's all he needs.
He
Uh,
has that. He has that thing where he could get a shot off whenever he wants.
yeah,
Really underrated skill. He could just get it up.
yeah, and I think he's a great teammate too. I think that's the other thing. I think he ingratiates himself with his teammates in a way that they want to see him do well. And there's some other issues emotionally, I suppose, on that team. I'm still concerned a little bit about the coaching. But this is a chance for Finch to kind of solidify some of his bona fides as far as being able to coach in the playoffs deep. I get worried about Karl Anthony Towns getting emotionally,
Unraveled.
yeah, his equilibrium, and that's not always a good thing. But this series could maybe eventually sort of forge some of those things. Rudy, they continually throw it to him too much on the offensive end. I get frustrated. He's doing
Maybe
nice.
that's to keep him engaged on the defensive end. They know they know you have to give it to him a little bit, like how the Bulls used to give it to Cartwright early. Keep
I
him
like that
engaged.
idea, but like you still can't even do what they did to Cartwright for him because Cartwright they'd give him a post up. You're not going to throw it to Rudy on the block and then cut through and let him do a post move like that would be a nightmare. But they still try and find him too much like on high post stuff, and the hands get stoned, and they fumble and whatever. So they're doing well. I think they're maximizing his ability, his skill set. A little bit of dishes where he can finish and then he can tip some stuff in. But I just feel like there is some weird thing where they do try and look for him a little bit too much, and sometimes it just drives me crazy because I just get nervous. I get nervous for him when he has the ball. I'm never quite sure when he's on the perimeter what's going to happen. But other than that, though, I mean, they look really good. I mean, Anthony Edwards shot horribly against the Suns in game 2, and they won handily.
So they have one of the best defenses in the NBA. They have Anthony Edwards, and they also have the most underrated player in the NBA, Naz Reid. And we mentioned Cat. Part of the reason why they didn't even miss a beat was because Naz Reid was there when Cat was out.
Oh, I did the video on that. Is Naz Reid like completely under the radar? People know him, right? I think.
Not enough. Not enough.
Not enough because and also I like about him is, I've been following his progression over all this time, and it's like he wasn't this player, a couple of years ago. So it's been
Was
really,
he not, or just he didn't get the opportunity? That's an interesting question.
yeah, maybe, but I do feel like there's been some progression, like his ball handling with his left hand, like all that, and going to the basket strong. Like, I would like to think that was developed over the last, like, more recently. But either way, it's a joy to watch. And, at his size, at like 6'9", 250, he is pretty much like a center, a modern center, but he can shoot threes. He can put the ball on the ground. He can dish. And he's probably better defensively than Cat. So
More versatile, right?
yeah, I think so. I think so. And so as a result, you have an embarrassment of riches because listen, Cat is also very good and causes a lot of problems for the other team. So you put all that together, and they got to figure out how to get Reed a few more minutes. It's almost like maybe shave a few minutes off of Rudy's minutes or something. Although I know that they've been playing Rudy and him together too.
They want to hang their hat on defense. They don't want to give that up.
Yeah,
They
I
don't want to
know.
give any of that up.
I don't know if how much more you give up, and then you can have a little bit more of a varied offense with Rudy's on the bench, and you have Reed at center. I should look at some of the lineup data to see if how often.
This also goes into the politics of basketball. If you're paying Rudy that much, he almost has to play.
Yeah, but okay. So instead of 40 minutes, he plays 37. I'm not saying like bench him, I'm just saying that maybe on the outskirts you can bump up, 5 extra minutes for Reed, find a couple from Cat, 3 from Rudy, and then we're in business.
I got another good video idea: Rudy or Wemby for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, it's weird because there it's what the position that they play compared to the position that like maybe a perimeter defender has to play. It's not, you can't compare them, right? And or even what like Draymond does. You really can't compare that. So I don't know. I don't know how we're supposed to do Defensive Player of the Year anymore because it's just two separate camps now. You got the Rudies and Wemby's, and you have the I don't know who's gosh, who am I talking about on the perimeter like now? That's great. I'd say Paul George, but he's already kind of beyond that in his
Jaden McDaniels,
McDaniels, those kind of guys.
OG.
OG, absolutely. Right. It's not
It's a new group of guys, right? Especially from the defensive side of things, because it's almost like the star players this year regress defensively before they regress offensively.
right. Interesting, right, and that makes sense because they want to
Yeah.
their energy for the offensive end. But like a typical OG is going to have to deal with trying to keep a guy in front and not let penetration from way out on the floor. They've also got to navigate screens all over the place. Rudy doesn't necessarily have to deal with any of that. And so that's just a different position altogether. It's a different game. So I don't, and again, it probably doesn't make sense to divide the Defensive Player of the Year up into a couple different categories, but it's just weird to me at this point where it's almost like having the best actor, Oscar, encompass like the best editor. It's like you can't have those two people in the same pool for the same award, and yeah, that's sort of what it feels like to me.
Drop us a like, drop us a share, subscribe to the NBA Report YouTube channel. Last thing before we get out of here, Coach Nick. A little bonus topic for you.
Oh,
are the Warriors done, man? Is the dynasty over?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You have some good pieces that are young that you could develop in theory. Moses Moody has been on the cusp of like making a turn. Kuminga probably has made that a little bit and that jump. Trace Jackson Davis is somebody. You still have Steph, who can play not quite his prime, but really good. So that leaves us with some decisions like a Wiggins, who probably they're going to maybe try and move on from if they can, but that's a tough contract. Clay would probably be another guy. And then I kind of been thinking that, the Draymond situation again, the only problem is you can't just say, well, we're going to trade him or we're going to get rid of him. You can't,
he doesn't have value to other teams like he has value to the Warriors.
Yeah. So it's like, you can't move him short of like cutting him, but you can't do that either. So I would like to think that maybe they would move on from Wiggins, and they might cost them, a pick or two to make that happen. And then Clay, the problem with Clay is he can have a game where he's 7 for 10 from 3 and he's great. And then, the next 3 games, he's got really bad shot selection. He can't hit a shot. And you don't want that kind of inconsistency when you have Steph on the last couple of years of his career. So it's a real problem, but they're great friends. They forged this identity together. But if they keep it all together like they're doing, yes, I don't think that they're going to be able to mount much of a threat to anybody in the West, unfortunately. But
so I mean,
past curve, putting something together and figuring out some solutions to help those younger guys, take another step.
I guess we've seen before where we thought like dynasties were over and they came back. I mean, the Warriors for one are one of them, right? People thought the dynasty was over in the past. I think the Spurs. Yeah. Who knows when Jordan went to baseball? People might have thought the Bulls were done.
Yeah.
So you just never know.
I mean, it would be great if like Clay said, you know what, we got that last one. I proved I can come back, yada yada, and then retire. I think that would be, a really ideal.
Oh, he would. That's not in his personality to retire after that one, though.
Well, yeah. I mean,
he probably thought at that point he has like 8 good years ahead of him.
Well, I know, but here we are 2 years out.
He did average like 20 though, right? Like
yeah.
What would you say? He's a slightly above average 2 guard, right? Still.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, he probably has some value, right? Like we mentioned that about there probably is value to other teams as well if they wanted to try and to do that. But again, you're right. It's silly to kind of talk about this because they're heroes in the Bay Area, and you have to worry about the fan base as well. Although, the fan base is kind of gosh, crazy. The Warriors fan base is pretty crazy, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, yeah, we could trade Clay, and whatever. You know what I mean? I wonder if how sentimental they would be. And now, obviously, Curry would be the other thing, which they would never tolerate. But I suspect that most of the other players they wouldn't be so concerned with, you know, in facilitating Curry's career and trying to squeeze another title out of that for him. But like, can they win another title? I guess is that what you're asking me, basically?
Yeah.
Like, right, like that's interesting prism. Like, you know, on paper, looking at it right now, like, no, that cannot happen. It won't happen.
I think there is an outside chance if Kuminga could take a crazy leap.
So if Kuminga basically becomes Wiggins from when they won.
I mean, better. I think he even has to be better because these guys are they aged since then.
Yeah.
I think he has to be
Okay.
better. Yeah.
So that's okay. So that would have to happen. I agree. That would have to happen that way. And then they would need yeah, I mean, if that happened, that would help. You know, because you also have like Looney. Looney probably should have, you know, give him a statue and whatever, let him retire.
Do like the Udonis Haslam thing, right? Or
yeah, right. Or do that, right.
Get a podcast, you know.
Right. So that's gone. You know, so okay, so if Kuminga is now playing 35 minutes a game, like, you know, better than Wiggins was then, and you have Steph doing Steph, you probably still need, you know, I don't know, Clay would probably still need to be even better than he is now. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Coach Nick, great stuff. If you are watching this live on the NBA Report, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it. Coach Nick, where can we find you, man? Where can we find you and all your great videos?
Oh, it's not too hard. If you type in the word B-ball on YouTube, it'll autofill to B-ball breakdown. So you don't even have to type the whole thing in, as a testament to how long I've been doing this and how old I am. But B-ball breakdown across the board is where you can find me, and we have a great discussion on Twitter. We have a really nice, you know, obviously everything happens on the YouTube side. So that's where you can find me.
Coach Nick, you know you're always welcome back on the NBA Report live show, and talk soon.
I'm in. All right, are we off?
I don't know.
Uh-oh. So wait, we're so you were using Zoom to broadcast to YouTube?
Yeah, I don't know if we're off though.
Oh. Okay, well, I guess there's only one way to check. CP, what's going on, man? All right, I will check. I will hit the button. Let's see what happens. Broadcast to YouTube? Oh, we are still on. Okay. Hey, bonus footage. Wow.
We're here. We're still recorded.
It looks like we're still live. All right. Well, hey. Anyway, I probably should have been on here. Anybody saying anything on the comments? I wasn't looking.
Maybe some questions.
You got a lot of links in your comments. Wow. Oh, I see. They're links for you, it looks like. Okay.
Okay.
Anyhow, what if I type this? Only channel subscribers can send messages. Interesting. I guess I'll subscribe to the NBA Report right now. You're going to watch me subscribe to your channel. Are you ready?
A true pro.
There it is. I am not. Now will let me do it. It still won't. I guess I'll have to refresh or something. Anyhow, all right. Well, listen, I think I got to get this video done on the Mavericks.
All right, we'll get it done. Yeah, we're good to go.
All right. Thanks, Combo. I'll talk to you on our show probably tomorrow.
See you soon.
All right.